the word for a pig is doyaji. 3 syllables. So doyaji, good soria, 이제 왔노. Hanora. So you're back.
Now you're home.
Yeah.
Now you come dragging home.
Right.
Annyeonghaseyo, this is Mark Peterson with the Frog Outside the Well Research Center, and today I am in, where are we? Watertown.
Watertown, yes.
Boston, Massachusetts, with my old friend and classmate from Harvard days.
Long ago, yeah.
Yeah, David McCann.
Greetings, yeah.
And David is a specialist in Korean literature, especially Sijo.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Sijo in a minute, but let's talk about your background. Where'd you do your undergraduate work?
I did my undergraduate work at Amherst College, and then graduated and went into the Peace Corps, and I wound up as one of the people in the first group that went to Korea.
The famous K1.
K1, yeah.
Korea 1.
Right.
And there were several academics that came out of that group.
Indeed, yes.
And you were in Andong.
I was in Andong. It was called a Yangban town.
Yeah.
And I had heard that, and I asked people, well, what's that mean? And they said, well, attention to the rituals of the long ago past, and the writings of the long ago past, and the music and the food. And I thought, ooh, this sounds pretty good to me.
You were in the perfect place.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect place. Yeah. So you came home from the Peace Corps, and you did a master's and a PhD at Harvard.
Well, but first I got married.
You married Ann Golden.
Yes. From the same Peace Corps group.
From the K1 Peace Corps group.
Yeah.
Where'd you get married?
Out there in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
She's from Indiana.
She's from. Yes, yeah.
Well, good for you.
She was the first person I spoke with in the group. We were all lined up to get onto the plane in Los Angeles airport to go to Hawaii for the training.
Yeah.
And this fellow in back of me asked the gal in back of him, where'd you go to college? And I heard her answer, Mount Holyoke. At which I spun around and said, Mount Holyoke? I went to Amherst. There we were.
There you were. And it was magic ever since.
Ever since, yes.
You're still together.
Yes, we are.
50-some years.
50-some years, yes, indeed.
Good.
That's higher math.
You can't count that high. Right. Okay, so you got a master's and PhD at Harvard, and then you went to Cornell to teach.
Right, yeah. And,
for how many years?
Gosh, went out there in 1976, and we were there for 21 years.
Oh, is it that long?
And my original appointment, my first appointment at Cornell, was in classical Japanese language and literature.
Oh, because at Harvard they didn't really have a Korean language thing. It had to be East Asian language.
They had language, but they didn't have Korean literature per se. But Professor Edward Wagner, gave me great support while I was doing my graduate studies at Harvard. And then I was in Korea on a Fulbright. You've heard of that, of course. And
a little bit.
73, 74, working on my dissertation. And that's when I got really involved in Korean poetry, and then the ways in which Korean poetry connects to song, and stayed with that all the way. But when I came back and finished my degree, there were no jobs anywhere in Korean literature.
Right.
And I got a one-year appointment at Cornell, filling in for Professor Karen Brazel, who was on leave for a year.
And you turned that 1 year temporary.
It turned into another year postdoc, and then another 1 year appointment in classical Japanese language and literature. And then I started working in the development office.
Oh.
But I kept a connection to the Asian Studies department.
Yeah.
I would teach 1 or 2 courses a year.
Yeah.
And then I was offered the job somewhere else in Korean Lit, and Cornell said, well, would you consider staying?
Oh.
And I said, oh boy.
Yeah.
And there we were.
And then Harvard recruited you to come back to Harvard, the tail end of your career.
Yeah.
How many years at Harvard at the end?
Oh my goodness. We came here in 1997, and I retired in 2014.
You're really old.
So I'm pretty old, yeah. There we were. But yeah, no, it was, I mean, this is the area where I grew up, and my parents were there, nearby. And, I had done my graduate work at Harvard, and I thought, gosh, it'd be fun to go back.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And you wrote your dissertation on Kasa.
Well, actually on the poetry of Kim So-woo.
Oh.
the background for his poetry, because he was known as a folk song poet, and that's something I had to figure out. What is a folk song poet? He was writing in the 1920s when a lot of poets in Korea were writing very nationally oriented, strive hard.
나 보기가 욕하실 때는 말없이
That was his
보내드리리다.
진달래꽃. And, there you have it. 나보기가 욕하실 때는 말없이 거의 보내드리리다. 나보기가 욕하실 때는. And it just fits into a song, and I studied some folk song, but then also, well, what other kinds of traditional song were there? And people everywhere told me about Sijo.
Sijo. Tell me about the meeting the professor at Kodae.
Oh, goodness.
What was his name?
I can't remember his name.
Husky guy.
Yeah.
I know who you mean.
Well, I did meet Kim Jong-gil, who was a professor of English at Kodae.
Yeah.
But in my interview with the Dean for International Studies at Kodae, that's when he was looking at the letter from my advisor, and he said, "Oh, interested in modern poetry?" And I said, "Yes." And and traditional, yes. Sijo. And I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, like this. 청산이."
And he launched right into
the whole
it.
thing. And I was just sitting there astonished.
He did the whole thing.
He sang the whole Sijo poem. Yeah.
Well, you've done a lot of wonderful things with Sijo. I like, and I quote you all the time, on your 청산이 벽에 수야, where you discovered that the first half of each line was written in Hanja.
Yeah.
The second half of each line was written in Hangul.
Yeah.
And this Huang Jini is tempting the man by speaking man language and then woman's language.
Right.
Official language and unofficial language. Classical Chinese and soft
vernacular Korean. Right.
And that's really clever how you discovered that.
And the first half of each line is sort of about the border that you operate in.
Yeah.
Like in these blue hills, jade green stream. That's the first 청산이 벽에 수야.
Yeah.
But then the second half of each line is always about moving past those borders.
Yeah.
수의강을 자랑 마라. What about take a rest and then go,
Don't be so proud of yourself. And then once you reach the vast sea, there's your border again. You cannot return.
It'd be hard to come back again.
Yeah.
While a bright moon, fills these empty hills.
Sailor.
Why not pause and then go on, if you will?
Yeah. That poem is just incredible.
It's amazing.
Just incredible. You let's see. Oh, I love the way you deal with Chungchul and encountering that monk.
Oh.
And he said, "Hey, monk."
Yeah.
Tell me that one.
Well, I mean, that Sijo poem is a wonderful example of sort of the performance dimensions of the Sijo, not just the singing of it, but, the poem in English would go, "Into the water a shadow falls. Over the bridge a monk is passing." That's the first line of it. And you can look down into the water and look up at the bridge and you see that monk. And then the second line is incredible, because in the Korean it's 저중아 거기 있거라 너 가는데 물어보자. Hey, you monk, stop right there. Let me just ask, where are you going? And then the third line is 막대로 with the staff, 흰 구름 가리키며, pointing up at the white clouds. 돌아 아니 보고, not turning to look back. He keeps on his way and just leaves Jungchul in the dust. It's astonishing. And to me, one of the things that's amazing is Jungchul left that poem for us to read centuries later. I mean, there he gets shown up as just the big, obnoxious government Confucian,
humiliated by this Buddhist monk.
At a time when there was great tension between...
And humiliated himself, Chungchul, as
he
is the
shared
Confucian.
It with us. Yeah. And I keep thinking of it was sort of like a selfie, like a video cam from long ago.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Richard Rutt, who we love and admire, wrote that in a very gentle way.
Yes,
Said, "Oh, good sir, where are you going?" And you pointed out that the Korean says, Isunga.
Yeah,
Very rude language.
Right.
When you were in Andong, I love the story of you started writing Sijo even back then, when you were a Peace Corps volunteer.
I tried, but I mean that one came later when I was
reflecting back
on the Fulbright and looking back on time in Andong.
Do that one for me.
That one about the pigs?
Out drinking at night and stumbling home through the rice paddies.
Yeah. I was at the Andong Agriculture and Forestry High School, and the teachers, some of them every once in a while during the week, would go into the downtown part, and we'd go to these nice little restaurants where you'd sit on the floor around one of those big tables, and you could have some wonderful food, Andong food, and some makgeolli, that white rice wine, very low alcohol content, and share stories and poems. And then they'd come to this going around the table singing a song. And it was just completely engaging. But then in those days, there was a 12 o'clock midnight curfew.
Oh, that's right.
And I had to get back to that place where I was living before midnight. And so I'd leave the restaurant in downtown Andong and make my way to the edge of town, and then a little bit farther out to where this house was located in the middle of all these paddy fields.
Rice fields,
rice fields.
And you're walking along the dikes of these rice fields.
Well, there was a little narrow path along the dikes, and I remembered back to that, and so I made up this Sijo poem, which in Korean goes 하룻밤 암동 시내 골목술집 구경하고, and then that's on an evening in downtown Seoul,
downtown
Andong. Yeah, right. I had a look at one of these little alleyway restaurants, and then the second line is 머리가 빙빙 돌 때 빡두기를 거닐다가. I like the boom 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 of the rhythm of the language in that one, but with my head spinning, I staggered down the narrow paddy field path. And then the third line is 도야지 꿀꿀 소리야 이제 왔노 하노라. And what was perfect is, the third line of a Sijo poem has to start with 3 syllables.
And it has to have a twist.
Has to have a twist.
Surprise.
So what could be better than the pigs who were always at the house when I came home?
Yeah. Greeting you.
Greeting me noisily. Right? That's the grunt, grunt. Gun, gun. But what's wonderful is Gyeongsangdo dialect, instead of 돼지, which is 2 syllables, the word for a pig is 도야지. 3 syllables. So 도야지 꿀꿀 소리야 이제 왔노 하노라. So you're back.
Now you're home.
Yeah.
Now you come dragging home.
Right. That was fun.
Oh, that's great. Well, you have a lot of fun with Sijo.
I do.
Yeah. And I do. That's one thing that you and I just really
done a lot of that
enjoy together. Yeah. And keep going.
I sure will.
Yeah.
And thank you.
We're not that old.
No, not yet.
Not yet. So keep writing.
아직도.
아직도. 가능성이 있어요.
Yeah.
Okay, this is my good friend David McCann. We enjoyed talking about Sijo.
Nice to share with you.
We'll see you again sometime.
You bet.
Bye.
Ciao.